Okay, so we have two people that are very unique. Kirstin is an attorney, and she's worked with criminal justice issues for a long time. And Jonathan has his own experience with criminal justice. Is that okay to say?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. And he can tell you more about that. So right now they're doing a lot of great work for advocacy with regard to criminal justice reform, and have great enthusiasm and passion for what they're doing. They're with the Atlas Justice Center in Arizona, and so I want to introduce Jonathan and Kirstin to you now to talk about what they're doing.
I know. If I can get up here without falling, the mic is so much better. I'm in control here. Good afternoon. We are just overwhelmed at the opportunity to talk to you about our work. We believe in our work so profoundly, and we love sharing it. And so we hope that you all enjoy our presentation today. Before we really get going, there we go. Let me tell you a little bit about who we are. You all kind of know our stories. We've talked about it in several of the other events. So let me tell you how we met, because that's part of what makes Atlas so powerful. And it's part of the reason that we're both so profoundly drawn to this work. The legal work that got me involved with prisoners' rights was a constitutional class action case against the Arizona Department of Corrections, because they were providing such horrific medical, mental health, and dental care that it amounts to torture. And I do not use that word lightly. What I have seen chills my blood, and I will never forget it. And one day, it was a late spring day, about now, actually, in 2012, I had a whole list of people that I was visiting, and I walked into this dingy visitation room and slumped over a table, pale and skinny and shivering, was Jonathan. And it literally, it was like a thunderbolt. In that moment, before I even talked to him, something told me, he is my kindred spirit, and we have work to do. And at that moment, little did he know what he was in for. And at that moment, he had just come back to prison from having undergone emergency surgery to remove a tumor from his colon that was cancerous, that had completely obstructed his intestines, because the Arizona Department of Corrections chose not to treat it for over 2 years. And he had gone into septic shock and came within a whisper of death. He is the man I met that day. You would just not believe, looking at what you see before you today. And that experience changed my life. It changed my career. I left my corporate law firm. I started my own law firm. And I've been working on that class action, which is still going on. It's probably a career case. But that moment was the moment that we both knew that we had work to do, and that we really were chosen to do this work together. So that's probably the most important part of Atlas, is the connection, the very kindred and cosmic connection that the two of us share. And that gives us the courage to take on the whole prison system, which we're going to talk to you about today. So before we can really get to the solutions that we've developed, we wanted to touch on two of the biggest challenges that we're going to face. The first one is the perfection myth. We are obsessed with perfection in America. I mean, literally, it's everywhere. Everybody has to be perfect. You can look at any area of life: academics, fashion, politics, and of course, prisons. And we are obsessed with perfection, which does not actually exist. What's worse, because we all know that our current system of prisons is as far from perfect as you could possibly get, is that we define perfection in such a pernicious way. Basically, it's defined as, let's put all the bad people away. As long as we are 100% successful at that, we have the perfect system of incarceration, which is absolute baloney, and that's a nice word. we are not striving for perfection in the systems that we design. Of course, we would like to achieve as high a success rate as we can, but we will never sacrifice our core values in the interest of getting 100% success, because it will never happen. And that it's chasing after a fool's errand to think that you can create something that's perfect, because guess what? People are involved, and people are beautifully and profoundly imperfect. And that is a concept that we have deeply internalized in all of our work. And so we're going to have to educate the public about this. We are well aware of that. But as you listen to what we're saying, realize that we embrace imperfection. That what we're trying to do is maintain humanity, and part of the core of humanity is imperfection. But this will be a major hurdle for us, because you have, this is the question we get, is how are you going to know? How are you going to know that when you release somebody, they're going to be safe for the community? Well, come on, folks. When we release them now, they're completely broken and destroyed from the system that we currently have in place. So it's the wrong question, basically. But it is something that we're going to have to address, because this idea of perfection and this elevation of perfection to the most important narrative is pervasive throughout American society. But it's not even the biggest problem, the biggest challenge that we have to face. And I'm sure that this does not surprise any of you. This is going to be the biggest problem that we have to fix coming out of our current system of corrections.
So to really understand the importance of the solutions, we have to look deeply at the root causes of imprisonment. There's when you're talking about reform, people talk about the side of let's add more programming, let's add more education to the system, and that does good. That does help. That will produce good results. And then there's the abolitionists who believe we should just dismantle the entire system. And really that's an incomplete picture, because the system itself is really what the problem is by its design. Everybody that comes in contact with the system is broken by it. From the staff members are becoming conditioned and institutionalized, to the family members who have to feel the trauma and the impact of what their loved ones are going through and bear the weight of helping them through that system financially and just being there for them. And then excuse me, I blanked for a second. But basically what I'm trying to say is that the system itself is flawed, and what's happening is people are going into the system. It's extremely violent, it's extremely dehumanizing, and you have to go through this and feel the impact of this for however many years that you're in there, and you're being conditioned. It's like if you start a new job and you have to learn that skill. At first, it's difficult and you're not sure if you can do it. And it might be scary, but after a while you learn that skill. It becomes repetitive and you don't really think about it, you just do it. And it's the same way in prison. The problem is that prison is the exact opposite of society. And so the skills that you develop to survive in the prison environment that you're being conditioned for don't function well out in society. So you get out here and you have tons of responsibility placed on you. And in the system, all self-agency is taken away from you. So responsibility is a skill that you learn through life. You start learning it as a child, and you master it by the time you're adult. That's how you function in society. So you don't really notice it because you're learning it throughout your life. But when you're in prison, that is taken away from you, all of your self-agency. So it's like a muscle. It's a skill, right? If you don't use it, it atrophies. And when you get out, you immediately have all of these responsibilities dumped on your shoulders. And it becomes overbearing and demoralizing. And some people, they fight, they find the inner strength to be able to get through it, but a lot of people don't. And that's why we have such high recidivism rates. And the other issue is the trauma. And I like to relate it to a physical fight. If you've ever been in a fight, you have one goal in mind is to survive, to win this fight. And you're taking blows and you're giving punches, but your adrenaline's pumping and you don't really feel it. But after the fight, when you have time to rest and relax, you start to feel the impact. You start to feel the bumps and the bruises and the scars of that. In prison, it's just like that. When you're going through that environment, the constant dehumanization, the violence that takes place around you all the time, whether you will be participating in it, you will be a victim of it, you will witness it on a constant basis. You become numb, you become callous. And through this, people develop psychological disorders. They get out, they're with their family, and they're dysfunctional, and their family's like trying to help, but they don't know what's really going on. And when people get out of prison, they're in a safe place, they're out of the fight. When you're going through trauma, you don't have time to feel it, you're surviving it. So when you get out, it all comes weighing down on you, and it crushes you. And in my personal experience, and with every single person that we've worked with coming out of the prison system, they have all experienced this mental breakdown where a close friend of mine, a brother, he did 12 years, and he got out, he had the perfect situation, he had a really good job, he had a place to stay, he had a vehicle, had everything set up for him, and he had a strong mind. And he's doing really well now. But, shortly after he was out, he got a text from his sister that said, "I'm proud of you." And he broke down, he cried for a day straight, and he didn't know what was going on. All these emotions came out. This is PTSD, this is trauma, this is what our system's doing to people. I've experienced this myself. And so when we try to talk about solutions, you can't just add programming to the system. It's still conditioning us to be a certain way and making us dysfunctional. So we have to start at the root, and we have to deal with the problem by creating different institutions, and that's what we've done. But that leads into accountability. And the narrative for accountability has always been placed on the shoulders of the individuals in the prison system, people who've committed crimes. And it's like, we need to be more accountable, or we need to be held more accountable. But the fact is, we're over accountable, right? We're thrown in prison for years. Our families suffer. We are tagged for life. We have to go through the trauma and inhumane treatment of the system. And we come out and our heads ain't right. And we don't know what's going on, and we feel alone. And we have to be able to struggle and make it through that. And like I said, many people do, but you know the statistics. Many people don't. I've been in prison 3 times myself, and I still struggle. I still struggle every day. But I'm finding a pathway. And the thing is that this is an opportunity for all of us to say, how about us be accountable? How about we stand together and become accountable? Because when we look at the system, the correctional system, people are coming out broke, not corrected, right? So if we allow this system to exist, then that's our responsibility. We can't just blame them for coming out and recommitting crimes when we're setting them up for failure, us up for failure, right? So it's an opportunity for us to stand together and say, you know what, this isn't right, it's broken, and we need to do something better, we need to fix it. And with that, I'll let Kirstin start explaining to you the system that we've developed.
So when we first decided to tackle this, which is obviously kind of an overwhelming task, you have to ask the very obvious question, what is the purpose of corrections? And of course, the answer is in the name. It's to correct. And our system does not address any of that. There's no rehabilitative component to our system. And so we did a lot of research, and we thought, what does rehabilitation look like? What are the tools that you can use to start to reach people? Because The core of rehabilitation, of course, is personal buy-in and empowerment, right? The individual has to believe in the rehabilitation program and in themselves. And the most powerful tool that we found that we've based our systems on is a concept and a tool called reproval.
So reproval, unlike punishment, is about learning, right? It's to reprove, like the word itself, right? To prove to you that that action or that behavior that you did was harmful. And so let's look at it and say, how could we have done this better? Or why did you, what's going on in your life that you can't cope with that caused you to make that decision? So reproval is a loving provision. It's about love. It's about humanity. And it's about saying, if there's an issue, let's get to the root and fix it and help you to become a better person, the person that you really are, the person that you can be, the person that you should be. And that's unlike our system of punishment, because our system of punishment is just to say, you messed up, you are a mistake, and we're gonna make you pay for it, right? And we're gonna break you. And so we see the results of that. It doesn't work, and it creates harm throughout the entirety of our society.
I'll walk back there, it's okay. So we have to get at the root causes here, not of what's wrong with our system, but what are the causes behind criminal behavior? Because when you're treating the behavior itself, you're treating the symptom. You're addressing the symptom, and that is not the issue. The issue is what caused that. The issue is the why. Why did you do that? What made you do that? What societal forces were at work that caused this to occur? Because there's always an answer somewhere. Largely and on a macro scale, the two deepest root causes in America are systemic predation, because we are a country of corporations, and we've prioritized corporate profits, and that feeds into the prison industrial complex, and also just society in general. And the other is abject poverty. And we've talked about the racial disparities that are inherent in the poverty-stricken neighborhoods that we see across our country. That certainly has to be part of the conversation. But in any community that is dominated by poverty, we're taking away entire generations of people. We are taking away, we are imprisoning the role models. These kids don't get to see that if they make a mistake, there's a path to redemption, because their parent gets tossed away forever, or certainly at least until they're an adult, because the prison sentences we hand out are incredibly long. In Scandinavia, the average prison sentence is 12 months. Okay? Here, we talk about 2, 3, 5 years as short sentences. Think about what happens in a child's life in 2 to 5 years. There's an incredible amount of growth, and families are missing that. These neighborhoods, and really our culture in general, is incredibly nutritionally deprived, socially deprived, culturally deprived, because we've chosen to separate ourselves, and we've let corporations and poverty become our defining platforms. So in our programs, what we do is we work with each individual to identify the root cause of their own behavior. This is a journey that we take with them. It's customized. We don't believe in one size fits all. There's no easy way to the answer, but it's a journey that we want to take with each individual, because when they can identify that moment in their life where they didn't get the guidance they needed, they didn't get the support and the love, they didn't get the opportunity, whatever it is, when they can identify that moment, we can go back and start to give them what they need. And they can give themselves what they need. They can begin to heal. And that's what our programs are all about. This is not going to be an easy journey. It's going to be really difficult, because one size fits all is so much easier. But we've got to get to the root causes to start helping people heal and start taking the focus off the criminal behavior and asking the really hard societal questions, which are why have we chosen to put our people in the position where they have to have these experiences where they don't get what they need. And that's when we're going to be able to start seeing true healing. Oops. We've done a lot of research on the prison systems in Scandinavia. I don't know if you all have heard about these systems, but they're really among the most successful in the world. Their recidivism rate hovers around 10%, and they have such low recidivism that they're closing prisons regularly and beginning to repurpose the buildings. Now, Scandinavian society looks very, very different from America. They don't have the racial diversity. They have much stronger social support systems, governmental support systems. So it's not a system that we can directly import. What we can import, though, are their two core values that are spread across their entire correctional system. And that, the two values are humanity and normality. Now, humanity is kind of obvious. The point of corrections should never be to deprive someone of their humanity or to break their spirit. And that's a top priority for the Scandinavian prisons. The other is normality. If you've ever seen a Scandinavian prison, they look like normal houses, apartments. They maintain normality on every level, not just the living quarters, but the relationship between staff and the people who are serving time. They try to make it look as close to society as they can, so that when people get released, they're not getting released into a society that they've become completely unfamiliar with. And so we have chosen to make these our core values. These are our touchstones. They're where we go when we're having trouble designing a program. We go back and we say, okay, what do we need to include to maintain humanity and to maintain normality? The other idea that's key to our programs is sustainability. We define this very broadly, but we look to nature, we look to the earth to develop our systems so that we are creating ecosystems that are entirely self-sustaining. This means that they will be financially self-sustaining, which will take the burden off the taxpayers, it will take the burden off the families, but they're also culturally, emotionally, and socially self-sustaining. They will be little microcosms where the people who are in them feel like they're a part of something and that they're really connected. So, that's a lot of really kind of vague stuff. How the heck is this going to work? We have two programs we're going to talk about today. This is the first one. This is a year-long residential reentry program. We are starting an organic farm that will specialize in heirloom vegetables and fair trade organic coffee. And folks, I know. I'm such a farm nerd, sorry. So a year is a nice chunk of time to start reintroducing folks to freedom, to themselves, to society, to start giving them the skills that they need, to start giving them the confidence they need, and also to start gradually reintroducing themselves into complex family relationships. Because let's be honest, all families are super complex. And when you jump straight from prison, I had a client who, and no, this is not an aberration, I had a client who spent 11 years in solitary. I was the only person he talked to on a human level for that entire time, and he was released out onto the streets, right? He hadn't had a conversation in 11 years except with his attorney. You cannot go from that into a family unit that has functioned without you and not, it's kind of a recipe for disaster. So this community is meant to help folks transition gradually back into their family units. Family will be an incredibly important cornerstone of this program, but folks will live here when they get out for a year. So we're going to be off the grid, as off the grid as you can be in Arizona because we love to regulate everything. So we can't even rainwater harvest, which is the most insane thing. And we'll embrace the system and the idea of permaculture, which is, again, this idea that we're all part of one, right? We're creating an ecosystem, a community, and a little society that will sustain itself. The farm will be staffed by the way, we call them prison survivors, because we don't believe in comparing trauma. This is not to denigrate the trauma that victims have experienced. It's to acknowledge the trauma that people in prison experience, which is equally as traumatic and important. And so you'll see that kind of throughout our talk. So we'll be staffed by prison survivors who are on parole and probation. They'll come directly from prison to the farm. And of course, they're going to learn how to farm. So the nuts and bolts of the program, it's an intensive one-year program. Again, one size does not fit all. So when they come in, they will get individually tailored education and therapy plans to meet their very specific needs. We will maintain very, very close connections with the community and the family. We'll have farm-to-table dinners where everything that we're growing on the farm will be cooked and prepared and served to the families of people who are staying there, along with community members, because in order for this to start becoming the norm, the community has to see the humanity in people coming out of prison. And one of the best ways to do that is to sit down over amazing food that these people have grown themselves, these plants that they have cared for and they have tended to, and now are these beautifully nutritious meals. Sit down together and get to know each other. So our second big project, and we'll get to kind of some of the specifics in a little bit because the two systems share a lot, it's a new correctional model. And this is a monumental task, trust me, we're well aware of that. But we're also undeterred because this is happening and somebody's got to fix it. We're ready to get our hands dirty, dig in, and get going. We call them S.H.R.R camps. We're trying to shed, we've talked a lot about semantics over the course of this conference. We're trying to shed as much of the prison terminology as we can. So we call them S.H.R.R camps, which stands for Secluded Habitat for Rehabilitation and Restoration. And the idea here is that we create a contained system that promotes and fosters humanity and normality. So, sentencing is not the best place to start, but you have to understand the way that we've structured it in order to understand the rest of the program. So, our sentencing structure is not offense-based, at least not at first. This means when you get sentenced, everybody gets the same sentence. Doesn't matter what you did. You get sentenced to rehabilitation and restoration. Rehabilitation can last for 2 to 20 or 25 years. And it's dependent on you. When you're rehabilitated, you are released. And that happens at a different pace for every person. And it shifts the focus from what did you do to can you function in society? Can you be happy? Can you be a whole person? Why would we keep someone incarcerated after they're already rehabilitated? That's just not the point of the program. And so once you're rehabilitated, then you begin the second phase, which is the restorative phase. And this one is offense-based. So if you committed a really serious crime, you will have a lengthy restorative justice sentence to serve in the community. But when you're doing that, you're in the community, you're living your life, you're giving back to the community. You're not rotting away in a prison cell doing nothing productive. So this completely changes the dynamic, completely changes the narrative. Now, I'm just going to get out of the way some of the questions that we get. If you present a serious danger to society, obviously we're going to have to make exceptions. Jonathan has met a ton of people in prison. I've met a ton of people in prison. We're not naive. But we also believe so strongly in the human spirit that we expect this population to be teeny tiny. Because when you get at the root causes, when you're willing to take the time to dig deep, almost everyone can be rehabilitated. We truly believe that. So we will make some exceptions, but like every program, we are not going to abandon our principles of humanity and normality, which means that even if you never get out of the rehabilitation phase, you will be housed in a facility that keeps you connected with your family, that maintains your humanity, it does not break your spirit, you'll be treated like a human being, and it will still mirror outside society. We will have a long-term residential facility. Again, we're expecting less than 1% of the people who come through to be there. And rehabilitation is not going to be, the failure to rehabilitate is not going to be defined by a particular psychiatric condition, because I think we've seen incredible strides made in dealing with psychiatric conditions that previously had been decided were, you were irredeemable, you could not be rehabilitated, you were always going to be a danger to society. California is on the cutting edge. There are risk takers out there, and so they put programs into place that have revolutionized a lot of criminal justice. But it will be defined by a lack of rehabilitation. That's the measurement here. There's no other measurement. So if you don't want to rehabilitate, you're just as likely to be in this facility as somebody who maybe has a severe psychiatric condition. But the idea is we're not going to just discard people because rehabilitating them is going to be difficult.
So that gets us into institutional detox. The S.H.R.R camp facility is a facility that's going to be open in like a society, even though it's going to have protection, like a normal prison, perimeter fences, and but within the unit, it's going to be designed like a community. So people are going to be open and have a lot of freedoms and responsibilities. And the problem with our current system is that it has trained and conditioned people to, gang code, politics, violence, and that doesn't just go away because you give people more freedom and responsibilities. So they will start out in a more secure unit where they will go through institutional detox, and what that is we're going to start with psychoeducation to help them understand how the environment that they've grown through has conditioned them to feel, think, and behave the way that they do, and how that's harmful to them, even though the idea is of gain and protection is to build yourself up. But really it causes harm to you by condemning you to imprisonment or violent situations, murder, and how it's harmful to your community. And we're going to show you that there is a way for you to take what's inside of you and your mind, the way that you think, and you can change the way you feel, think, and behave to be more successful and use your abilities to really build up your community and the people around you. We're not going to press the idea of you're in a gang, you have to get out of a gang. We don't care about that. We care about you as an individual and what you giving you the ability to be a leader in your community and empowering you and helping you to become whole. So this will be the first step of that. And once they graduate through this, they will enter into the S.H.R.R camps, and then they will start all of the training that's going to help them to develop all the skills that they need to be highly functional and leaders in society, along with trade skills, so that they can they're going to be working and making money and saving money. They're going to get out and be well prepared for life and be able to have careers, and they're going to be thankful and grateful, just like I am, for what I have. So that empowers you to say, hey, I can go out and do something, and I'm going to get in my community and try to build it up. So that's what we're trying to do.
So the way that we're going to handle rehabilitation, once you get out of the ID program, then you get into the meat of the issue. And on the farm, the ID, the institutional detox will be much shorter, though it will still absolutely be your first exposure to our programs. But on the S.H.R.R. camps, rehabilitation, this is another time that we've looked at the Scandinavian model, because people come out of their prisons completely rehabilitated. So the statistics are kind of crazy. They actually have lower recidivism, so 27% lower recidivism after people go to prison than if people get community service or probation. And that's because their prison system is structured to rehabilitate folks, and they come out rehabilitated and are less likely to offend. And the way that they achieve that is through structured work and programming. And so that's part of why we've embraced the farming model, because it is a very structured program. If you do not water those plants, you do not go out there and do the farm chores, stuff's gonna die. So it's a daily structure that will always be there for them. Plus, I have to say, and I'm sure you have guessed this, I believe very strongly in the incredible healing of digging your hands into the soil, of watching things grow, and sort of communing with the earth, which sounds a little, I don't know, it is what it is. So, but I think plants and farming and the earth are very healing, and that's what we want to expose people to. So everyone who is at the S.H.R.R. camp will participate in what we call earning trades, and this is how we become financially self-sustaining as a facility, so that we rely minimally on tax dollars and never ever on corporate profits or corporate support. And that means that we've got the farm going, we'll be part of community-supported agriculture, farmers markets, we'll have the coffee roasting business, we'll have furniture making, welding, all these kinds of things that, one, teach folks a skill, but also help sustain the program, and they earn real money. The point is they get to put that money, they get to put a portion of it on their books, so this relieves some of the pressure off of families, because when you are already struggling to make ends meet, but you love the person who's in prison and you want to make sure that they're taken care of, it's going to be a struggle to find the money to cover all of that. And so by giving them the opportunity to participate in an earning trade, they can support themselves throughout their prison stay. Plus, they're not going to need to buy as much food because we'll be providing good food. They'll be growing it themselves. But also, it puts it into a vested savings account that they'll get when they exit the program. And this will provide them with the funds to get transportation, to get housing, to start their educations, to enter back into their families with some financial independence. We also have a reentry class that we teach, because since we both know so many people still in the system, we did want to make an immediate impact. And that class is built around the principle that if you map it, you can achieve it. Because you will always feel a sense of progress, even if it's incremental, if you've taken the time to map it out. And so everybody in every program that we have will really learn how to map. Some of these folks have never made a to-do list, and we start there. We start with daily to-do lists, and then we progress all the way to where do you want to be, what's your ultimate goal? And it varies. Some people, their ultimate goal is to have a simple life. Well, what does that mean? What does that look like? Let's map it out, each component, so you can achieve it. Some people want to own their own company. Some people want to have a family. Whatever it is, we're going to map it out, and then during their stay, they'll create all the necessary sub-maps so that when they get out, they have a plan. But it's not a vague plan, it's an actual plan that walks them step by step. Okay, this is what I need to do now. This is what I need to do now. So that they feel that progress. Because if you're stuck in a rut, if you're having to endure something that's really tough, it's always easier to do that if you know that it's part of the journey. And that's especially for Jonathan, he's had to work some terrible jobs. I mean, seriously. And he got through it because he knew it was part of his plan. And he could see the end game. He could see the light at the end of the tunnel, and that's what kept him going. They will have an individually tailored education plan. We have both psychoeducation and more traditional educational models, which I'll get into in just a minute. They'll take our ID class, which is what I just talked about. It's our reentry class. Alcohol and substance abuse counseling. Like everything, we do not believe one size fits all, and so we will offer a wide variety of different programs because the point here is long-term sobriety. It's not pushing 12 steps or any of the other programs. People need to find what resonates for them, not what we think should resonate for them, but what actually resonates for them, and that's their choice, because that's how they're going to achieve long-term sobriety. Trauma therapy, canine, equine therapy, it will be a very therapeutic environment because therapy is going to be a cornerstone of transitioning into a functional mind state. I should say. The other thing that we'll do are called community integration exercises, again drawn from the Scandinavian model, where we will take people out with their mentor. Everybody is going to have an assigned mentor. They'll go out into the community and experience situations of increasing stress in short spurts. And this way, they can, one, identify what situations actually do stress them out, what are triggers, what's going to set them off, and then they can slowly develop coping mechanisms to handle the situations once they're out. The other thing that this does is it embraces the idea of, it's called the polished class model of corrections. And the idea is you go out into society, nobody knows but you and your mentor that you are serving time. You don't look any different, nobody knows. And this leads to a lot of self-reflection because you're not being dehumanized. Nobody's putting a stigma on you at that point. You're just out interacting with society. And it gives you a lot of time to self-reflect and figure out what your triggers are and how you can stay out of prison long term. Or the SH.R.R camps, because there will be prisons. The second phase of your sentence is restoration. And I think that most of you are familiar with the concept of restorative justice. We take that one step further, because in order for restorative justice to work, it has to be everybody who's involved. And that means willing victims and their families need to be a part of designing the program, the person themselves, their family, and the community that they're paroling out to. Because this needs to be a conversation. It's not an imposition, it's a conversation about healing. And every person who's going to participate in that healing needs to be at the table. And with that in mind, it will aim to make the victim whole. It will also aim to make the person who's serving time whole, and it will aim to make the community not only whole, but better. What this does is it introduces people back into their communities in the most positive light, because they're coming back giving. They're not taking, they're not a drain on resources, they're coming back and they're introducing positive things into the community. And that's really powerful because it completely undermines one of the really pervasive stereotypes, which is that people who go to prison are good for nothing and they're there because they didn't try hard enough or they're bad people. And this just completely changes that narrative. This is far superior to parole and probation because the mentor who's guiding you through your restoration sentence is there to help you succeed. They're there to sit with you in the struggles and help you find a way forward. And they're there to help you find solutions when things go awry. Again, we're not expecting perfection. There's no way you're going to be perfect coming out of prison. But the idea is that they're there to help find a solution. They're not waiting for you to fail. They're there to help you. And that, again, completely flips the current paradigm on its head. So, this thing is like upside down. The other thing that's really unique and very different from our current system of corrections is we encourage interpersonal relationships between staff and the people serving time. That's part of maintaining both humanity and normality. And it works incredibly well in Scandinavia. It's very, very contrary even to our workplace paradigms where you're sort of encouraged to just work with the people you know but kind of keep your distance, right? This is your professional world and this is your personal world and they need to remain separate. But the idea is you've got to connect on a human level with people. That's where the healing starts. When you connect on that human level, that's when they're going to be able to heal. That's when, and both sides are going to be able to heal. The other thing that it does is it completely discards the power dynamic that exists in our current prison system. Because let me tell you, that is one of the biggest problems we face, and it is not the fault of the corrections officers. They have a really, really hard job. This is human psychology. One of the experts I work with on my prison case is he was the graduate student who designed the Stanford Prison Project. And I had a very long drive with him one day, and when we were just talking about his work and his project, and he said, you know, when you create a power dynamic, a vacuum that vast, it flips a sadistic switch in humans. It's not something that these folks consciously do. It's not that they're bad. It's not that they're evil. It's human psychology. And we've seen that over and over again. We've seen it in the Stanford Prison Project. When Dr. Haney saw news of Abu Ghraib, he called his mentor and he's like, oh my God, it's happened. There it is, there's our project, right? Those folks weren't bad folks. Something was triggered in their mind, and that cannot exist in S.H.R.R camps. And in order to completely negate that and toss that aside, we're going to encourage interpersonal relationships. We want to make our positions desirable endpoints in people's careers, so that when they choose to be a mentor at a S.H.R.R camp, that's like their dream job. They're educated, they know what they're doing, they have a good basis in psychoeducation, cognitive behavior, so that we're not putting folks in these very, very low-paying jobs and then subjecting themselves to stress that almost no human could endure. Because I know, having talked to several of these corrections officers, they too suffer from PTSD. Because just like Jonathan said, it's a fight. And when they're working, it's a fight for them too. And when they get back on the outside and it hits them what they've just seen, it breaks them. It breaks them just like it breaks the rest of us. Because bottom line, they're people. They're humans just like the rest of us. Cost, we're getting rid of corporate profits. This is a nonprofit model. We would be contracted with the state, just like private prisons are, but we would not be corporate. We are nonprofit. So that's going to shave tens of millions of dollars right off the top of the budget. Just as an example, the medical subcontractor in Arizona budgets for about $12 million in profit. $12 million in profit just for the medical subcontractor. So, I mean, that's an easy way to save money. I've talked a little bit about our financial self-sustainability and where the funds will go. So the idea is this actually costs less while spending more per prisoner. So the Scandinavian model, they spend about $93,000. Arizona, I think we spend, I don't know, 27 or 43. So
It's
43,000 per prisoner. So it is more per prisoner, but we're trimming off the corporate fat. And we're putting more money into the pot. I think, we sort of touched on this already, but this is a question we get asked frequently. What are you going to do if someone doesn't want to work the program? How are you going to handle disciplinary situations? We're going to handle them, again, using our core values as the touchstone, because truly, most disciplinary and criminal situations arise from these things: trauma, addiction, institutionalization, systemic predation, prolonged exposure to hyperviolence. And then, of course, the fact that our prisons are the largest mental health hospitals in our states. Certainly that's true in Arizona. And so what do? We do what we always do, and we go to the root causes, because we're not focused on behavior. We've created a peer court-based restorative justice. This is based on a really successful model of teen court in Arizona that a judge in Guadalupe is using. And one of the sentences that was given out in teen court was to join the teen court. So these are really meant to be restorative. They're meant to heal. And they get people involved in the whole idea and concept of true self-reflection. We also are going to cut out the bullshit, which is, I'm sorry, but there's just no other word for it. I don't say that word very often, but it is what it is. You're not going to get written up for wearing your beanie to bed. You're not going to get a major disciplinary violation for doing your own laundry. You're not going to, you're going to be allowed to cover your windows if you want, or not cover them. I mean, there's this immense web of disciplinary bureaucracy that's just complete hogwash, and it's going away. And then we have a rehabilitate or a reflective model that we call consequences, accountability, rehabilitation, and restoration, or C.R.R. And this is what we'll use in each disciplinary situation. But the bottom line is, no matter what part of our program you're talking about, we steadfastly refuse to stray from our core values, no matter how difficult the situation is. I have no idea how we're doing on time. Okay, that's good. We're almost done. So the orientation, this is at Hello Beyond. What I wanted to talk about in terms of this that we'll also use at the S.H.R.R. camps is really cutting edge and thorough psychological and emotional vetting tools. This is not to identify the bad apples or put you in a particular class or another. It's to give us a true understanding of your mental health and emotional landscape, because it's only from that place that we can help you design the program that you need. And these are some of the important components: the motivational interviewing, social empathy index, and then of course a complete mental and physical health assessment. This is our class, which if you're interested in, there's a lot more on the website. Identity is a big portion of our philosophy, but in the class we teach institutional detox, we teach instinctual defiance, right? And this is why we need a year with people, because in order to defy your instincts, you have to practice all the time, because the whole, when you're acting upon an instinct, you're not thinking. And so you have to train your body to adopt new habits and new instincts. We teach them individual diagramming, and we teach them to identify direction. Where are they going? Where are they heading? And then we teach them to get in touch with their dreams, because let's be honest, when you grow up in a poverty-stricken community, when you've been through incarceration, when you've been operating from a survivalist mentality, you don't have the luxury of dreaming. And on top of that, dreaming is freaking vulnerable. It's really vulnerable because you have to allow yourself to open to that possibility. Even if you don't tell a single person what your dream is, it's incredibly vulnerable to go there yourself. And we create a safe space where people can open themselves to their dreams, where they can truly figure out where they want to go. Because that's going to be the key. When you connect with your dream, then you can overcome any obstacle. So they'll be going through that class. These are the programs. It's a mix of really practical stuff, because we're not going to assume people know how to do anything. We don't know what they've been exposed to, what they haven't. And even if they've been exposed to it, they certainly can improve upon it. And then we have some traditional academic classes, and then social justice classes. So it's kind of a mix. These classes will operate in 1 month blocks, so that whenever you come in, you'll get to create you'll get to complete the entire cycle, and you don't have to wait for the next cycle to start. And these will just be ongoing. The other idea is each prisoner will have to teach a class, because there is no better way to learn than teaching. And it also, helps get them used to public speaking and, breaking ideas down, communicating, articulating themselves. So the idea is that they get a really solid foundation from this, and they build upon that based on their individual plan, which will include, vocational, other academic training, or other therapeutic types of training. Trauma therapy is going to be huge. And this is part of our institutional detox, but it will really flow throughout our entire program, because until S.H.R.R. camps are pervasive and until they have become the norm, we have to undo all the damage that our current system does. And we're well aware of that. That's why we created the ID program as the first step, because we have to unravel that trauma. That on top of the fact that most people coming into prison already suffer from trauma, complex trauma, and so by the time they're coming out of our incarceration system, they have complex PTSD, which is, it's not even a widely talked about type of PTSD. It's similar to PTSD, but it's influenced by years and years of previous trauma, not just the single experience. And then we will teach social and emotional intelligence. We knew we had to include some sort of anger management, but we both hate that term. Like, it's insulting, frankly. And so we wanted to include it. We want to help people learn how to handle the really intense and complex emotions that they're going to encounter when they get out, but in productive and safe and structured ways. And so they will get social and emotional intelligence therapy and training. So that's the beginning. When we come back, we'll be reporting to you all on how the farm is going and how our pilot program is going. We're currently talking to several state legislatures about starting a pilot program of the S.H.R.R. camps. I think a lot of people are motivated to do something. And that's part of what led us to create these programs is we know what the problems are, and the two of us are done talking. We just want to get out there and start doing. Are we going to be perfect and succeed right away? Of course not. We're going to have bumps in the road, but our hearts are in it, and we're going to do this. And so we hope that you all follow our work. We're absolutely happy to talk more about the programs. There's a lot of stuff that we just didn't have time to include. We kind of wanted to give you the broad overview of exactly how we're planning to tackle this problem and talk to you about the philosophy that we've based both of these programs on.
I would just add that with the S.H.R.R. camps and the idea of replacing the prisons is we want to do the S.H.R.R. camp, show that it's successful and that it's cost effective, and then get the public backing to say, hey, look, we're tired of paying for this system that's destroying people, and we have a system over here that works, and it doesn't cost us as much psychologically, societal, and economically. And that's how we do it, because we talked about it yesterday. The power to overcome the politics, the power to overcome the corporations that are immensely strong is the united voice of the people. If people speak up and say, hey, we're tired of this, together, unified, it's going to get done. We put the pressure on them, it's going to get done. So you have prisons here, up here, you have S.H.R.R. camps here. This works. Over time, they replace. They take over the government, the money, the funding that's going into the current system. And that's our plan. That's how we do it. We're going to route around the politics and the corporate profits.